Good evening, members, and thank you for attending this extraordinary meeting on Monday, the 8th of February. And we'll go straight to webcasting introduction. If I may ask Gary Woodhull to actually do that, please.
Thank you. The Chairman would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing or other such use by third parties. Therefore, by participating in this virtual meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. If members of the public do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the virtual meeting is turned off and set to audio only. And purely for this meeting, we are also using the recording function on Zoom as well. Please also be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, the Chairman may need to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Pond.
Okay, right. Before we go to declarations of interest, I would like to know if we have any apologies for absence, please.
Yes, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel I need to make the same declaration as I did at the special ONS meeting. It's a non-prejudicial interest. I'm a member of the Epping Forest Heritage Trust, and I'm also a officially appointed Epping Forest Heritage Trust ambassador, but I consider the interest to be non-prejudicial, so I will take part in the debate and vote. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, noted. Councillor Weeksley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, as before, at the Overview Scrutiny Committee, I make the same declaration that I made then, as I'm also a member of the Epping Forest Heritage Trust. I'm just an ordinary member, and I'm not in any, shall I speak tonight? I won't be speaking on behalf of the Epping Forest Heritage Trust, just on my own behalf. And I've got no idea whether the Epping Forest Heritage Trust have got a view on this matter either. So that's my declaration, non-prejudicial.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse. Janet Whitehouse, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I make the same declaration. I'm also a member of the Heritage Trust. Thank you.
Thank you, noted. Councillor Bob Jennings. You're muted.
I beg your pardon. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I too have to make the same declaration. My wife and I are both members of the Epping Forest Heritage Trust.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other declarations. Sorry, Councillor John Whitehouse.
I mean, I'm not convinced actually it does meet the definition of an interest, but in the interest of consistency, I'm also a member of the Epping Forest Heritage Trust.
Fine. Noted. Thank you. Okay. And I declare that I will be a voting chair tonight. Right. Before we go to item 3, I would like to say that I would like to remind you that this is a very important meeting, and it is vital that the meeting takes place in an orderly and polite manner. Please use the Zoom hand, but if you cannot, please raise your hand manually. But note, I cannot guarantee your place in the queue. Please keep muted at all times, except when it is your turn to speak. During the debate to the matter under discussion, the time of the speeches is restricted to 3 minutes for each speaker. Only the proposer of the motion or the proposer of any amendments will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. Okay. Item 3, motions. We have a motion. I would ask Councillor Chris Bond to take us through this motion.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sorry, I've just had a total technical failure, but I'm back. I want to say in words of one syllable why a number of councillors from different groups have asked you to call this meeting. It's because the future of one of the finest forests in the country and the continent is at stake. The forest is in an unfavourable state of conservation. That effectively means parts of it are slowly dying. The cause of this bad state is bad air. The bad air is caused by thousands of cars and thousands of gas boilers owned by people like you and I who live near the forest. The bad air will be made worse by EFDC planning thousands of new homes near the forest. Each new house or flat with its cars and its gas boiler or boilers. The EF area, the district council area, is geographically large, but the majority of development has chosen to go into the southern part, of the area, which is the area where the special area of conservation is situated. Houses are built right up to the forest edge, and new ones are planned very near the forest. Each one of these houses will have its 2 cars, its delivery vehicles, and so on, built right up to the forest. So it is already under stress, and it will become under worse stress if the FDC's plan to grant planning permissions very near the forest is gone ahead with. This motion is about not increasing the damage we have done and are doing to the fragile resource. By allocating new housing in the south of the district, we are increasing that stress. More than 1,000 houses each to Epping and to Love. By not progressing any of these till well after we are all driving electric cars or have air source heaters, then it might be possible. But perhaps 5,000 more cars in the immediate vicinity of the SAC in the coming few years is unacceptable. Now, to offset this, the FDC have invented their interim air quality mitigation strategy. It is proposed, though, to release 140 odd planning permissions for 450 or so dwellings on the basis of this strategy, and that they can then be built out. The central pillar of this strategy is a clean air zone, whereby polluting vehicles will be kept out of the forest by forcing drivers to pay a charge. Now, we are told that this may never happen, as we'll all be in electric cars, and in any case, 2025 is the earliest we'll get round to it. So I said at the call-in meeting, the CAZ is there just as a blind for the inspector, so she will get the local plan through. Then it won't happen. We say no. Look at the Natural England position statement. They say they expect the actual delivery of the mitigation, that is the CAZ, etc., alongside the unlocking of development. So if you think the CAZ is something airy-fairy that might happen in 4 or 5 years' time, or might not, think again. The FDC, not being a highway authority, cannot devise a CAZ on its own. It will have to get Essex County Council to do it. Natural England are looking for explicit commitments on mitigation, and what you have before you contain none of these. There are other means of mitigation. We moved a motion at the council in December 2017 to shift development away from the south of the district and to concentrate it in the north. We said that sites up in the north should take the development that the Conservative government were then forcing on us. The effects of traffic and boiler exhaust on the forest were only then becoming known, even though the SAC had been declared in 2005 and Epping Forest Council have had plenty of time to respond to it. Where is the infrastructure plan? The infrastructure plan, the draft I saw of it, envisaged widening Woodridden Hill and increasing the capacity of the Wakes Arms roundabout. What damage will that do to the forest? The most effective mitigation will be to move development well away from the forest. This could be achieved most effectively by deleting about 10, only 10, allocated sites from the plan via the major modifications process, which is ongoing. Epping South, for instance, a site for 950 dwellings reduced by the inspector I know, is only the width of the M25 away from one of the most sensitive parts of the SAC. Sites R4 and 9 in Loughton are for 328 dwellings, which the developer wants to pad to even more, all within a mile of the SAC. Loughton R7 is for only 20 dwellings, but it's within 4 minutes walk of the SAC. The best mitigation is not a CAZ, it is to remove these sites from the equation altogether. And at the stroke, we would limit the damage to the special area of conservation. The explosion of social media fury and frenzy should be proof to the administration and their advisor that a CAZ is not an acceptable way forward to the local people. It is not acceptable. So the concentration of development must be moved elsewhere.
Chairman, we have reached the 5-minute limit.
Thank you. I'll finish here.
Thank you, Councillor Pond. Do you have a second, Councillor Pond?
I have Councillor John Whitehouse will second this motion, Madam.
Okay, Councillor John Whitehouse, would you like to speak, or do you reserve your speech until later in the debate?
I'll speak now, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, let me start with what I think is common ground. I think most councillors here want to protect the forest. It's not just an important site to us, it's a site of international importance. And all the evidence show that the forest would be damaged by air pollution resulting from further development, including that proposed in the local plan. And I think most councillors want to reduce the air pollution experienced by the residents they represent. But one of the effects of a charging zone would be to divert the most polluting traffic onto residential roads. And I think most councillors do think the current uncertainty and difficulty around the granting of planning permissions is profoundly unsatisfactory. These aren't easy things to reconcile, and I have sympathy with everyone who has to grapple with it. But I think the Conservative group is wrong to have seized on road charging as the tool which will cut through the contradictions in the local plan. There are, as we'll hear further tonight, very real problems that will be caused by the introduction of a charging zone. These will of course vary depending on the area covered, the vehicles affected, the exemptions and exceptions that might be allowed. And one of the failings of the proposed strategy is the vagueness on many of these topics. But we can be sure any charging zone will divert traffic from charged for roads to other roads, many of them residential in Faden Boys, Loughton, Buckhurst Hill and elsewhere. They will result in some traffic travelling much further to get from place to place, with the consequent impacts. And there are some journeys, Faden Boys or Loughton to the M25, for example, which cannot sensibly be made without going through the forest. The majority group is seeking to bind the council to the principle of a charging zone with a complete lack of detail and not tied to levels of development or assessments of air pollution, but to a series of dates set out in their strategy. We need to realise that we're in this position because of a series of choices leading up to this position. It was a choice made by the Conservatives to adopt a strategy that clustered most non-garden town development around the forest, despite the concerns that we, the Conservatives and others raised both at the consultation stage and at the examination stage. It was a choice to include 1,000 homes south of Epping, very close to the forest. When the Liberal Democrat group proposed taking this site out of the local plan, partly because of the air pollution impact on the forest, the Conservative group voted to keep it in. And it's been a choice to forge ahead with the charging zone, which is only on the table because of the quantity of development in proximity to the forest, without looking fully at what other issues raised at examination could be addressed. For example, the effect on air pollution of reducing the volume of development so close to the forest, by removing, for example, Epping South and other areas, by changing other approaches. The Conservative group may have made some wrong choices to get us here, but it's not too late to think again on this, and I ask them to do so tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehouse. I have been notified there is an amendment today. So, and before we go to the amendment, I would like to introduce to the members, we have legal advice by James Moriti, should we need his advice. Okay, I will go straight to Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. The following amendment is proposed to the motion. The original motion, Council hereby declares that it will determine planning applications only on the basis of the law, including NPPF and other national guidance, the 1998 local plan and the latest iteration of the local plan, which needs to be added to your amendment. The rest will be replaced, and it follows that the Cabinet Member for Planning and Sustainability will form a cross-party portfolio advisory group in no more than 1 month from the date of this resolution. The group is formed to support the portfolio holder in the delivery of the interim air pollution mitigation strategy and provide oversight of the work of the technical stakeholder group. This could include working with officers to identify further initiatives not identified in the APMS, which could be brought forward to advance the air quality improvements and the objective of removing the need to introduce a clean air zone or CAZ. Alongside the acceleration and enhancement of mitigation measures, the portfolio holder advisory group will provide democratic oversight of the delivery of any CAZ scheme prior to its consideration through the Council's formal decision-making processes and public consultation on it. In the event that future air quality monitoring and modelling continues to demonstrate that even after the acceleration and enhancement of mitigation measures, a CAZ is required. As agreed by this Council on the 14th of December 2017, the local plan submission version 2017 was endorsed as a material consideration to be used in the determination of planning applications. Paragraph 48 of the NPPF, our emerging local plan, is an advanced stage and policies in that plan now carry substantial weight. We are in the process of agreeing the main modifications to the plan with the inspector and will shortly go out to 6-week consultation, giving everyone the opportunity to comment on the proposed changes, including the policy on the Epping Forest SAC. Council will, of course, in determining planning applications, make decisions in accordance with its policies. Legal advice has confirmed there is no legal reason for not adopting the interim air pollution mitigation strategy and using it in our planning decisions. If we withhold making proper decisions when all the legal advice says we should, we put the Council at risk of legal challenge. This carries serious reputational and financial risk for the taxpayers of the district. I remind members that Council adopted the interim approach to managing recreational pressure on the Epping Forest SAC in October 2018, and this has been a material consideration in the determination of planning applications since then. The legal principles are the same for the interim APMS, and we've been issuing planning decisions using this. The Council has finally agreed a mitigation strategy with Natural England, and there's no reason why this should not now be adopted as a material consideration, so the Council can now start to determine the planning applications which have been held in abeyance since June 2018. The mitigation strategy is based on current evidence and includes the implementation of a CAZ from 2025. However, again, I make it clear to members that no design work for a CAZ or charging fee level has been agreed. Like most members here, I would strongly like to avoid the need for a CAZ and believe that we must all come together to try and achieve this. We must find new initiatives that reduce pollution in the forest. If the original motion is approved, it will be likely to stop all the backlog of planning applications in the district being determined. The purpose of the mitigation measures is to try and improve the air quality in the forest and the health of the forest, and thus remove the need for a CAZ. The fact is 150 applications have not been determined with local people affected. It's not just those waiting to build their homes, but many tradespeople who rely on this employment. There's also a knock-on impact to our local economy, residents and businesses. Officers are working on reviewing applications, and I would hope after this evening we will be able to start a programme of controlled releases. No one is trying to suggest that adopting the APMS as a material consideration overrides the Council's duties in considering the applications to comply with the habitats regulations. If passed, this amendment will agree to the establishment of a cross-party portfolio advisory group to oversee the delivery of measures set out in the interim APMS between now and 2025, providing oversight of the work of the technical stakeholder group monitoring and reviewing the policies and mitigation strategy as we move towards 2025, hopefully demonstrating that a clean air zone is not required. The original motion as it stands is now not compatible with the desire of this council to support economic growth or recovery of our high streets and local economy. It also puts the council at considerable reputational and financial risk. Remember that failure to agree the interim APMS and submit to the inspector will mean further delay to the adoption of the local plan. If this council does not progress with adopting the local plan, it may mean starting again. If this happens, our housing needs, as identified by the government on the 16th of December 2020, is 20,966 homes, which equals 953 per annum, rather than the 11,400 homes or 518 homes per annum as set out in our emerging plan. We run the risk of planning by appeal as well as having our planners' powers removed by government. I therefore move that this motion is amended and the motion as amended is put to full council and approved. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Do you have a seconder?
I do. Councillor John Philip, please.
Councillor Philip, would you like to speak, or you reserve your speech until later in the debate?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to second the motion, but I will reserve my right to speak until the end.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open the debate. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. As this is the first time I've spoken this evening, I want to first of all put on public record, which I'm sure most councillors would agree with, my thanks for the dozens of emails and communications I've had from local residents on this issue. I've done my best, like other councillors, to respond to all of them individually, and I put on record my apology if any replies have fallen by the wayside. But like other members, I have been absolutely inundated by emails and letters on this issue. I thought that needed to be said. I won't be supporting this amendment, Chairman, and it's mainly because of the substance. It does nothing about stopping releases being allowed now, which is the very issue why we need a mitigation strategy. Nothing is being shifted away from sites within the CAS, the forest area. And my other reason for not supporting this is that it does nothing to actually alleviate the fact that a clean air zone might be necessary. And can I remind members that if you look very carefully at what Natural England are saying, they are saying that to be fully compliant with case law as regards the planning and to unlock the development, the actual delivery of this mitigation strategy is necessary. So it might push it down the road, but it doesn't get rid of that threat of a CAS, and that's why I won't be supporting it. I do want to just say one other thing about procedure, which I will amplify if there's a main motion to debate on. But my final remark at this stage is I do need to just remind members that we wouldn't even be holding this meeting if it wasn't for minority group councillors. It would have all been decided by a single councillor, the portfolio holder. It was called in at a special ONS, which we were severely criticised over publicly. I won't go into detail now what the criticisms are, but I might later. And then at the ONS meeting, we were actually told by leading members of scrutiny, and I've checked today what was said, one of the select committee of scrutiny chairman actually said adequate consultation had taken place, all reasonable steps had been taken, and we've got everything we need to know. Well, that clearly wasn't the case, and we wouldn't be having this extraordinary meeting tonight if 5 members of council hadn't exercised their right to call this meeting. And I have to say, I'm not surprised, but I do want to express my disappointment that we didn't receive this amendment until 17:48. That's right, members, just over an hour before this meeting. The majority group knew about this meeting weeks ago. The majority group had the motion that we were considering weeks ago, and yet it's deemed acceptable to table a motion to all members of council. So that means the minority group members hadn't seen it just over an hour before the meeting.
3
And
minutes.
it's not even on the public agenda until it was moved. So very unhappy with the content of the amendment and very unhappy about the procedure again. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Noted. Thank you very much. Councillor Stoker.
Thank you, Chairman. For me, this motion's about a lot more than air pollution strategy or a clean air zone, important though those things are. It's really about the ability of this council to fulfil its mandate to serve the people who put us here on the council, and about the consequences of losing control of one of our most important functions. And that's our power to decide what gets built, where it gets built, and when it gets built, in order that we can preserve and develop this district for future generations. So let me tell you about a resident in my ward who contacted me in 2019. She came close to being evicted from a house on her father-in-law's land that she and her partner had spent years of time, money and effort making into a home where their 3-year-old child had grown up and recently begun attending a local nursery. So you're all entitled to ask why they nearly became homeless. Why, when they'd obtained all the necessary permission to convert the building 2 years previously and abided by every rule and regulation since? Why, when they've made their application in plenty of time, provided all the required surveys and information, and our planning officers have promptly assessed it and recommended approval? Why? Because despite them living over 7.5 miles away from the forest, due to natural in the sack, this council was unable to grant a simple application to class their home as a separate dwelling when her father-in-law decided to retire and sell the main farmhouse. Nothing at their home would change. The same 3 people would be living in the same building, generating the same amount of traffic and the same carbon footprint. They tried everything. The planning officers tried everything too. I had to tell them there's nothing we can do. As the farm sale got closer, I became involved and I got nowhere either. Under the personal intervention of a cabinet member, managed to resolve this nightmare for them just in time. For that, I'm grateful, and I know they're grateful too. So here we are, Chair. This family found themselves, having complied with every rule, having a letter upon which all their hopes and dreams rested, sitting in an office on someone's desk. But that letter could not be posted to them because of a blanket ban imposed by an unelected body with no regard for their actual circumstances. You might expect something like this in Cuba, or maybe in Cold War East Germany, but not in Epping Forest in 2019. So please, let's act to stop any more local families or businesses suffering in this way. It's not fair, it's not proportional, and most importantly, it's not democratic. We shouldn't be handing power to remote, unaccountable organisations impossible for people to influence. We shouldn't be taking the risk of placing lives, livelihoods, and the air quality of the forest in someone else's hands. It's crucial that we safeguard our emerging local plan and allow this council to work constructively with government bodies for the benefit of everyone in Epping Forest, whether it's north, south or anywhere else. I believe that what's proposed, supported by expert legal opinion, is the only way of achieving this, whilst also being able to maintain control of our own affairs now and in the coming years. And for those reasons, I'll be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Darshan Sangha.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It is essential that members support the need for mitigation measures to protect the European Heritage Site and the SAC of Epping Forest. The forest is a national asset and its care and sustainability must not be compromised. It is understood that now the measures for mitigation are now agreed between the Council and Natural England. This viable, sustainable protection for the forest can now be delivered by a payment secured by a Section 106 agreement. There is considerable pressure on the district to deliver its housing of 11,400 and to agree the emerging local plan. The SAC issue is the remaining matter to be agreed. Now that SAC and Epping Forest can be protected and its future secured, The council needs to focus on its responsibility to deliver the necessary housing. This process has already taken nearly 3 years to resolve, and now there is an agreement. It is unreasonable to allow any more further delays. As we are all democratically elected councillors, you need to be seen to be fair and reasonable to all parties and do not want to be seen to be politically driven. I'll repeat that. We do not need to be seen to be politically driven or anti-development in your approach. Many local businesses, from planning, construction, through to householder development, have, over the past 3 years, suffered seriously as a result of these delays. And the council, now that the SAC is properly protected, needs to promote the local economy and protect employment. The last thing that this council needs is more further delays. Enabling the government to step in and make unpopular decisions on behalf of the LPA. Members, therefore, I respectfully ask all councillors, including those that have put this motion forward tonight, to support our amendment to the motion. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sherry Ruckman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking all the residents that have contacted me. And I would also like to add that we are very aware of residents' concerns. But I do have to add that not only do we have NIMBYs, we also appear to have bananas. Bananas are people that believe that if you build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody, and the problem with that is that it's our children who won't be able to find a home. And this administration, in my view, has done a good job of finding a balance between building the homes that our children and grandchildren and people who live and work in our district need, and also protecting our forest. We will do everything we can through the interim air quality management plan to reduce emissions and the harm that they are causing to the forest, in the hope that we never need to introduce vehicle charging. This means looking at all sources of pollution, and one of the biggest is domestic and commercial gas boilers. I'd like to think that we could offer an incentive to people to change their gas boilers to air source heat pumps. And I'd also like to think that we could look at the rubbish that we send to places like Edmonton, where the North London Waste Authority is planning to build a new incinerator. And that we can find a better way of dealing with our own rubbish, which will not involve burning it 5 miles southwest of us. And all we have to do is we all have to do our bit. Everybody needs to look at their own personal carbon footprint and do whatever they can to reduce it. And I'd like to finish with the fact that this plan that I am endorsing is about protecting our forest. And that is what this administration is trying to do. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Owen.
Thank you, Chairman. I do not believe it's in the residents' interest to destroy our beautiful forest by doing irreparable damage now and pretending we can mitigate it in 5 years' time. The strategy of the council is now very unclear to me. On the one hand, we want to protect the forest by forcing residents to pay the CAS, but at the same time, we're promoting an HGV site with Next, where the council knows full well one of the biggest pollutants to the forest is HGVs. There was a report done by IDOM for the City of London in October 2019, IDOM being an engineering consulting firm, and I've pulled together a few snippets that I wanted to highlight. Over 60% of the forest is in unfavourable condition. Background levels of air pollutants are exceeding critical levels in Epping Forest. The forest is highly vulnerable to additional threats, such as increased traffic emissions with future plans of the EFDC local plan. So I'd like to leave it with you with this thought. How can we build hundreds of homes next to a forest that's already in unfavourable condition and somehow believe that in 2025 it will be in such favourable condition that we won't even need a CAS, as has been suggested. I put it to everyone, this is just impossible, and all sites of mass development near the forest need to be removed. A vote tonight that results in mass building next to the forest is a vote not only against residents' wishes, but also a vote against our beautiful forest for future generations to come. I will leave it there, but I have a question for the legal representative, if I can ask it now.
We will have to go to a closed session if you do that.
Okay, well, I will not do that now then.
Thank you. Councillor, I think it will be Chris Roberts, if I'm right.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll keep it brief as I possibly can. I'd like to disagree with the motion. I won't be able to support the amendment because Epping Forest is in already such a poor condition. I know we've heard that from other councillors, but it is true, and we'll say it again. The forest is a victim of its own success, but there's been several studies that state that it's suffering really badly from pollution. I don't know how we can ignore that. If we don't do something now, then the condition of the forest is just going to go. It's just going to go from bad to worse. And what a loss this ancient woodland would be. Well, other councillors have said it's a national treasure. Well, I completely agree that, but more so for local residents. It's one of the beauties of living in Epping Forest District, I'm sure. The special area of conservation was designed to offer the forest some respite and protection now because it needs it, not because someone sat behind a desk and decided to throw something together to literally give people headaches. It was done for a reason. And what I want to see, what I'd like to see, is a full raft of measures to protect the forest. Now, not post-development. These measures of mitigation, if applied piecemeal, and after we start ignoring the special area of conservation in favour of development near the forest, will only add to the problems the forest is already experiencing. And moreover, if you introduce mitigation after we start building locally to the forest, how can you properly quantify the effect of any mitigation measures? Because the chance to monitor before you put in place building and the extra stress on the forest will be lost. So any data, any scientific data, and anyone will tell you that you can't monitor a measure after the fact. It needs to be done beforehand. So I'm afraid I can't support this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Heap.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I disagree with the amendment, and we are addressing the amendment at this point because it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't actually do anything constructive or helpful. It just kicks the can down the road, or in fact, puts a fig leaf on the fig leaf that is the air strategy. It doesn't move permissions away from the SAC. It doesn't address the impacts of the M25 on the SAC. If it does happen, it won't be binding. There's nothing to suggest it will be binding. It does not give us a chance to, it's not even suggested that there's a review of the initial scientific study, which is flawed and clearly flawed, because if there is a map from the Imperial College in London for the pollution map of London, and they look for 4 things, one of which is NO2, another is PM10s, PM2.5s, and ozone. The air strategy only mentions ozone once. So we're saying, yes, okay, build right next to the forest. All of the deliveries that will take place, and light good vehicles are the most polluting. There's no indication of what will be exemptions from these. Farm vehicles, presumably, they're not the best kept things. So yes, as Councillor Stalker said, knock-on effects to residents and businesses. What was that, Councillor Bedford? Well, yes, there will be. If the cars get diverted to Shewston Road, that will severely reduce the value of those houses, as it will elsewhere in Loughton and in Chigwell when they go down that road. So we have to think about what can we do now to help the forest, because the forest is in a bad state, and it is made worse by the fact that the M25 is chucking out an enormous amount of pollution. And the survey by IDOM that Councillor Owen was talking about does say that the pollutants usually fall within, well, effectively fall within 17 metres of the roadway, but the overall picture is much, much worse in the SAC, and that's probably due to the M25, and there's nothing to address that here. So what we can do is move building away from the SAC right now. That's the thing we can do, and that will save the forest. So I'm against this motion, against the amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave Dorrell.
Thank you, Chairman. As anybody who watched the Cabinet meeting last July or the ONS meeting last month will be aware, I'm not in favour of a CAS or a ULEZ or however you wish to characterise it. I don't propose to repeat myself today. Therefore, I was very interested to see the motion being brought today when it was published a couple of weeks ago. But unfortunately, rather than ruling out a CAS, the motion appears to require it to be baked into any future interim air quality strategy. And it's not clear to me, should the motion pass unamended, at what point the public consultations that are outlined in the interim strategy would take place. This therefore just looks like a lengthy pause in the ratification of the local plan, with all the hazard that presents, and other members have already spoken about that, so I don't propose to repeat what they've said. And at the end of it, we get a CAS anyway. So I don't understand that position, and so therefore I can't support the motion as drafted. And furthermore, I believe Councillor Bedford's amendment offers the best hope of a consensus-based way out of the impasse. The council finds itself in an almost impossible position, with one arm of government telling us we must build and another arm of government telling us we can't. And I just think we've got to come up with some creative ways to mitigate the impact of necessary development. We do need to do some development, but while still protecting the forest. And therefore, I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. In recent weeks, some members of the opposition and members of no to CAS group seem to have lost all sense of proportion. Many have relied on half-truths and spin as though they were fact, and I would say they've irresponsibly misled local residents. You'd never have guessed there's elections in just a few months. Simplistic political slogans are great on leaflets and indeed Facebook groups, but they do not reflect the realities and responsibilities which we all have to face up to as elected councillors. They neglect the detail, which is so vital when we come to form our decisions, which ultimately shape the future of our district. I have no doubt that the majority of councillors here this evening passionately care about their local communities. I know I certainly do. So let me tell you why I support this amendment this evening. And it's not because I support a CAS, because let me make it clear, it's something that I do not want and I want to avoid. And I hope to be one of the many voices advocating that we do everything we can to avoid this. My support for this strategy comes from a position of balance, because I want to protect our forest, which is precious and important to our local environment. I also want to enable appropriate and sustainable development. I support this amendment because, unlike some members of the opposition, I'm a realist and not an idealist. There is no option to stop all development, or indeed stop all development in Loughton, as seems to be the proposal of Councillor Pond. Indeed, without a strategy, we're opening ourselves up to potentially uncontrolled development, larger quantities of development. We could even have a CAS imposed upon us. Without a strategy, we lose our voice and our control. And perhaps this is what the opposition want, an easy way out. This evening, examples of families and small businesses who have been detrimentally affected by the situation have been listed. Indeed, in recent days, I've gone through the list of applications, And they're very modest, the vast majority of them. In fact, one in my ward is a rugby pitch. And I know that actually around 40% of these applications are towards the Harlow area, and they spread across the whole district. As district councillors, we should also be looking at the wider impact. As Council House, as a cabinet member for housing, I was shocked to hear that actually if this motion was passed this evening, it will actually stop our Council House building programme. So we're actually detrimentally affecting local people who need affordable housing. And in fact, a number of Council House building units in Loughton have already been paused, a number of garage sites. And as an Epping councillor, I was absolutely shocked and disappointed that the Liberal Democrats supported this, because it will actually stop us delivering a new sports centre and swimming pool in Epping, something which I have fought for years, and I know the Liberal Democrats have fought for also. So I was shocked to see this. So this evening, I'm asking colleagues to reflect on the wider impact of this irresponsible motion and support Councillor Bedford's amendment. The words "no to CAS" may be good on a leaflet, they may be a great election slogan, but they do not tell the whole story or provide important details which we should all consider in our decision making. I hope that tonight members face up to reality and their responsibilities as councillors and not vandalise the future of our district for the sake of cheap political points. Let's work together to avoid the CAS and ensure we stay in control of local development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Aniket Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure that when each of us stood for election to the District Council, in our election address we stated we would fight to protect our precious green belt. This is our number one priority when developing the local plan and selecting sites for development. New homes are required for future generations and all councils are required by government to sustainably meet some of this need in their local authority areas. In Epping Forest District, we have planned to accommodate 11,400 homes. In some of the email circulars, residents have questioned why this figure is as high as it is. Those involved in the process will know that if the council doesn't properly plan to meet its housing requirement, then the government's planning inspector can find the local plan unsound and will be forced to accommodate a much higher figure. Our housing requirement could potentially increase to nearly 21,000. The draft local plan was probably debated by this council and it was agreed that it should be submitted to the planning inspector for their approval. To make sure that the emerging local plan can be found sound, the council must have an air pollution mitigation strategy. The council have worked closely with Natural England to develop an air pollution mitigation strategy that sets out how the council would mitigate the impact of new developments on the air quality in the forest in a way that didn't make the current position worse. It is felt that this will be acceptable to the local plan inspector. The interim air pollution mitigation strategy sets out the actions the council and the government will implement to reduce the emission of harmful gases and particulates from vehicles, homes and businesses. Despite its inclusion in the interim air pollution mitigation strategy, it doesn't mean that a clean air zone has to happen. A clean air zone can be avoided if all proposed and new mitigation measures reduced air pollution sufficiently. It is more realistic for us as a council to avoid a clean air zone when facilitating a lower number of houses within the district than a higher number. As a result, air pollution will be significantly less. Our plan states we will accommodate 11,400 new homes over the plan period. However, if the plan fails, we will be forced to accommodate nearly 21,000 new homes, making a clean air zone inevitable. It will also mean that the open green spaces within our towns and parishes will need to be considered again as potential sites for development. The amended motion, which is proposed by Councillor Nigel Bedford, suggests a sensible way forward. A cross-party portfolio advisory group will ensure that all political groups will have a say in the delivery of the interim air mitigation strategy. Our council has a history of achieving great outcomes for their residents when councillors and the officers work together, and I have faith in this portfolio advisory group to identify further initiatives not yet identified in the air pollution mitigation strategy that could be brought forward to advance air quality improvements with the objective of removing the need to introduce a clean air zone. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jamie McIver.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And firstly, may I say that I'm convinced that all members of this council love our forest and want to ensure it has a healthy future. But I think it's clear to both this Conservative administration and indeed the entire population of Epping Forest that the opposition are choosing to cause as much uncertainty to Epping Forest's economy as possible, creating a challenge to a local plan that has been well consulted, planned and developed by our excellent officers and free planning portfolio holders. A plan ready for delivery for the people of Epping Forest. This is the last minute attempt to frustrate the many families in our communities that are relying on this plan for their lives and in many cases their livelihoods. And the distasteful timing of this manoeuvre from the opposition goes to show their lack of understanding for how important our local plan is for our local economy. The same opposition members who tell this council repeatedly to do more to save our high streets are simultaneously using their powers to encourage a scenario that would ruin so many of our local businesses. And not just small family-run developers and those businesses, they even want to make life difficult for all of the other small businesses in the chain. I wonder if any of these members could speak face to face with those who will be directly impacted by their actions, from the sandwich makers to the scaffolders. Will any of the members opposite take responsibility for the personal loss of income, home repossessions, loss of lifestyle that some of our residents may face as a result of reckless actions? And Madam Chairman, whilst on the one hand, the politician in me is grateful that the opposition have chosen to show their true colours just months before a local election, on the other hand, I am tonight filled with great concern, a concern that members of this council are choosing to thwart a process and a plan that is oven ready, with full of opportunity for the people of Epping Forest. My ward of North Weald alone has many outstanding applications, and these applications represent people and lives, not big developers with big bank balances. Surely, as councillors, it is our duty to act in the best interest of our residents. The local plan is there for generations to benefit from, and of course, my generation in particular deserves this plan. We also must control our plan. This seems to me to be an outdated attack on this council's future, for no real reason, I believe, other than political point scoring. I hope members see the bigger picture tonight. I believe our residents will, and I will be supporting Councillor Bedford's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, it seems like it's a parade of Conservatives speaking on this amendment this evening. And I've heard some very good speeches and very good comments about why we should support the amendment and not the motion put forward. And firstly, I think it's essential to clear up the falsehoods of what the Coalition's motion would achieve. For all those people on the No to CAS Facebook page, it does not achieve your goal. In fact, it makes it more likely that we will end up with a CAS. The motion takes away control from the District Council and asks the inspector to rule upon the mitigation strategy as to whether it's fit for purpose, despite the support of Natural England. This delay won't take weeks, but possibly many months and even years. I'm not even sure it's legal or desirable for the council or the inspector. And during this time, the air pollution will continue to get worse and the forest will continue to go downhill. Therefore, by the time anything was agreed, it will be more likely that a CAS was required rather than less likely. And in the meantime, under the opposition, we would continue to be unable to pass planning permissions in the north, in the south, in the east and the west of our district, all over. Not just for small housing developments, but small businesses, including children's nurseries and even a proposed cemetery. Indeed, for this council, it could put back our plans to deliver a new sports centre in Epping, or it could even mean it's put on hold for a long time. It could put on hold and delay the new hospital in Harlow, which is part of the Epping Forest local plan, or members seem to forget that conveniently. We could face the Secretary of State imposing a local plan, as happened in South Oxfordshire in December. And this would have further uncertainties attached to it, and would not necessarily achieve the backyard NIMBYism of what is coming from Councillor Pond and the Loughton residents. It would probably lead to higher numbers of housing being required. Alternatively, there is the pragmatic way forward, as set out in the amendment, which I'd call on all members to support. Despite those who have sought to mislead residents, a CAS is not yet set out as the only solution. We have not discussed how it would be designed, what vehicles will be included, and we certainly have not discussed or agreed any charging strategy. And it won't be required until 2025, if at all, if I have my way. What we're already doing is putting in place a mitigation strategy. Only if this fails to address the air quality issue will we consider a CAS. The amendment sets out clearly our position and ambition, including setting up the portfolio holder advisory group to look at additional measures, reviewing and monitoring in order to do everything possible to avoid a CAS. But if required, it will be a CAS that's designed by Epping Forest for Epping Forest. That will go through all the democratic processes and consultation that's required. And finally, this amendment will enable the council to process the outstanding planning permissions and start to progress others. Some of these will be small developments of much needed homes, others for businesses, creating jobs and opportunities in the district, and some just for families who want to build an annex for parents or children. All will create economic activity and jobs that will be much needed in a post-COVID world. Therefore, I will call upon all members this evening, support the amendment. Let's end this lockdown of our planning system and move our district forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howard Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I regret we are at this unfortunate point. It's not doing us any favours falling out amongst ourselves or with the public that we represent. So I am uncomfortable with supporting this amendment because it's not treating us with respect. It was released far too late. The announcement on the 23rd of December was too late. It was ill thought out and it lacked any consultation with the other parties that form part of Epping Forest District Council, which I'm very proud of. I do take some exception to some of the comments that have been made by other councillors. A good opposition is really important to keep the council on its toes. Without a good opposition, where the hell are we? What decisions would be made? We're doing our job. We're trying to actually police properly the way the council is perceived and the way it acts. It wants to act well, I know that. But it seems that we are trying to adopt a strategy and a policy which is unknown. We're voting for something that we don't know what it means. We don't know if it's implemented, it's actually even good enough. So what we're trying to say is we should encourage building away from the forest. If we are going to allow building close to the forest, it should be the developer, not the existing residents that have to pay for it by way of a charge. So we should increase the levy on development closer to the forest to discourage that development. Some of the sites are very, very close and will cause enormous damage, and they should be either removed or taxed more to really stop the perception of the public is that we are going to tax the public to enable the developments to go forward. We all know this, the new developments must be carbon neutral. We have to deal with that type of thing. Qualis are going to bring forward as much as possible electric parking in the new car park. We're doing the right thing. We are on message to do the right thing. So through seal charging, we can proportionately restrict development and make sure development takes place in the right areas. Councillor Whitbread is right. We shouldn't be stopping individual homes, and we can have exemptions from individual homes that are close to the forest. And also, again, for Councillor Whitbread, Councillor Holly Whitbread, she's got a very good point, but affordable housing is already exempt from seal charging. It's doing enough, it's hard enough to create it. The council's done really well. And the last thing is to stop affordable housing. It shouldn't stop the leisure centre going forward. We're just talking about development that's damaging the forest. I've got a personal concern that we make a decision tonight based upon a policy that we don't understand, that potentially would be subject to a JR. If we allow the planning to go through tonight, people will start to build. Somebody could challenge this through a JR because our policy is not thought out, our strategy is wrong, which I believe is a case for a judicial review, possibly. And then the council will be in the position of whether what the inspector might say. So we're saying really we're jumping the gun by 2 or 3 months. But I do understand it's an unfortunate position we're in. But the amendment should have been circulated 2 weeks ago, giving us more time to discuss it, not last minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors Chris and Caroline Pond.
Chairman.
Right, thank you.
There is a problem. Councillor Caroline Pond, yeah. There is a problem. We cannot hear you.
Yeah. I have to shout. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Right, okay.
Yes.
The local plan has taken years, at least 16 years. If it was so important for this council to do, why didn't we get on with it earlier? The list of sites, we did ask for. It would have been nice to have seen that. We did ask. Measures in the strategy need more detail, more consultation is needed. The CAS involves major problems.
I'm so sorry. You're frozen? Yeah, please continue.
Right. No new development within 1 mile of the SAC is a much simpler solution to reduce pollution. We must protect the forest. I think we all want to do that. It's ancient woodland and heath, which is rare in Great Britain and internationally. The forest was saved by ordinary people who stopped it being sold off for development. They shouldn't be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stephen Neville.
Thank you, Chair. When the air pollution mitigation strategy was signed off by one person, the portfolio holder, in December, it was rightly called in by councillors, including myself. While there's many things we would welcome in if it done in their own right, in this case, they were being brought in to facilitate future development near the forest. Integral to this is the proposal for a clean air zone. I'm glad to hear that people don't want it, and I've heard that tonight. As Greens, we've been open and honest, and we've said we would normally support such a thing. However, this clean air zone is potentially brought in 2025, so that developments can take place near the forest. I think this is what's getting people angry. Such a zone cannot be introduced by this council because we're not the competent authority, and that's a good thing to know. That is the county council. It may need government support as well. So we're promising Natural England something we may not actually be able to deliver. Indeed, a clear air zone was projected for Basildon and then refused by Essex. Clean air zones are often introduced in urban areas to protect people's health from existing air pollution. Such zones are often supported by good public transport infrastructure with regular bus and train services. However, in Epping Forest, the alternative is poor. In local plan infrastructure delivery plan, the only planned proposals to improve public transport are in the Garden Town development, with only a general promise for elsewhere, and certainly nothing concrete in many towns and villages affected by the local plan. The services have been going backwards in recent years, and a number of bus services have been cut back or withdrawn. Without decent public transport, the effect of charging, and you will need to charge to make it effective, will penalise the poorest who can't afford to change vehicles and don't have a decent alternative. In all my time on this council, I've never seen some movement of all political hues in condemnation of a particular potential plan. I think Councillor Pond has made a sensible suggestion on the way forward, and I do not have any real faith in this amendment because I don't think it has any teeth, and we could still end up with the clean air zone, which a lot of people want. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Councillor Wixley, I do have been notified that Councillor Lee would like to speak. She has raised her hand, so she will be after Councillor Wixley. Thank you. Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When we had the call in the ONS, I did say if ever something should have had a briefing, it would have been this. I've attended so many briefings and workshops, and I think this is definitely a case where we needed one, where we could have been better informed than probably we are tonight. What I'm slightly concerned about and a bit resentful of actually is that some members seem to regarding this as an anti-business situation, that we're not supporting local businesses by not going through with this. My concern is the effect of a CAZ charge on family budgets, which includes a charge to local businesses. I'm thinking of people who work as plumbers, electricians, painters and decorators, the very people who are being employed in building. So those charges have got to be passed on. I've got no clear information as to what use is going to be made of this charge or what it's likely to be, how much money it's going to be raised, how it's going to be spent, who's going to spend it. And of course, theoretically, it should have a diminishing return because as more vehicles convert to electric or hybrid, then the charge should go down. Well, what I'm concerned about is that the charge may in fact morph into some sort of tax, a road pricing system, because once you start collecting money off people, sometimes it can be a bit addictive and it's hard to stop it. So I think there are so many questions that the public would like answered now so they can plan ahead for the future if there is to be a CAZ, and that is totally unclear tonight whether it's going to come into effect or not. We've got less than 5 years to find out. So that's one thing. I'm also concerned about people avoiding the CAZ by driving, as been mentioned earlier, taking other routes and polluting other areas, particularly if some of those routes go past schools. And the devil is very much in the detail. Another concern of mine is looking at the what's been proposed is the introduction of banning right-hand turn at the junction of the A21, that's Honey Lane, into Forest Side, and what sort of implications that would have, for instance, for people in High Beach. So there's all sorts of details which aren't in, which we don't know anything about. And as our Councillor Cuffton said earlier, it's very difficult to know what we're actually voting for because the devil is in detail and we haven't got enough detail. So I'd just like to, they're my comments, and thank you for giving me the chance to make them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to speak tonight, but I've listened very carefully to everything everyone's saying. And I obviously look at things completely different, the housewife, etc. One thing, we're always told with the emissions that cattle these emissions, so we mustn't eat meat. So they've put a herd of cattle in the forest. So that doesn't make sense to me for a start. I couldn't support the motion. I will be supporting the amendment only because I've had people crying to me on the field in Tesco's because their husbands are small builders, just doing very small developments, have got no work and they've got no money and no food. And this motion, as far as I know, will just basically stop anything going on as far as building. We've got to have some properties. This is even stopping that are nowhere near the forest. So, one, I want to say that I will be supporting the amendment. I'm very disappointed in some of the things some people have said, because I do think, yes, it's just trying to be political scoring instead of really looking and working with their residents. That's why I became a councillor, and I work very hard with residents. And while this past year's gone on, I'm one of the very few councillors that actually still has to speak to residents. One, I have no choice, because some come and give me a load of abuse while I'm sat on the tills, for various reasons. So I will be supporting the amendment, and say I'm quite disappointed with some of the things said, because I think it's just political scoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sampkane.
Thank you, Chairman. Been a very interesting debate. I've made quite a few notes here. Councillor Owen was right to point out that the damage to the forest is in fact now, and he notes that it's 60% unfavourable. Councillor Roberts calling for a full raft of measures required now. We've had questions from Simon Heap saying, what could we do now? We've had, what else have I got here? Yes, we've had Stephen Neville calling for public transport enhancements to make it more reliable. And Councillor Kaufman is suggesting that the developers should pay rather than the residents, and look for carbon neutral development and sill charging. And all of these things are exactly the reason that I will be supporting this amendment. With the portfolios advisory group, this is where these things can be discussed. We can define and implement better mitigation than is currently in the strategy. It is, after all, a strategy, not a plan. The idea behind this group is to find better and improved ways of mitigating the problem. We all recognise there's a problem there, and simply not building will just not make it worse. What it won't do is resolve the problem. What we need to do is resolve the problem by finding the funds to make sure that we can create a proper public transport system that works for our district, that we get the right people to pay, i.e. the developers if they're developing that area. I think a levy on those developments would pay for a lot of the mitigation. So I will be supporting this amendment, because it's only through discussion, cross-party discussion, that we can find the right ways to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bob Jennings.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I'm sure that everyone agrees here that the protection and preservation of Epping Forest, which as we know covers a large part of our district, is of prime importance to us all. And I'm also sure that everyone agrees that issues surrounding the interim air pollution mitigation strategy have caused our residents great concern, to say the least, evidenced not only by the high volume of email traffic we have all received, but more recently with the considered assessments from local groups such as the Epping Society, which I think was emailed out earlier today. And I certainly understand the Cabinet's desire to avoid any punitive measures being imposed by government by getting the emerging local plan agreed sooner rather than later. But I would say if the Cabinet is confident in the soundness of its interim air pollution mitigation strategy, it should wait until such time as the draft local plan, of which this strategy is an integral part, is formally approved. Otherwise, it runs the risk that the local plan inspector does not give her approval. And if that is the case, then any planning applications held in abeyance since June 2018 and subsequently granted planning permission over the next weeks and months will be irreversible. Furthermore, the assumption must be made that if a clean air zone will not be in place until 2024-25, then further planning applications within the 200-metre zone of Epping Forest might also be given planning permission, exacerbating the whole situation. I would therefore suggest that the Council waits until such time as the Inspector has considered the interim air pollution mitigation strategy, That way, any comments or directions she makes can be taken on board, allowing the council to move forward and consult with our residents, safe in the knowledge that the plan has its official backing. So in light of our residents' serious concerns, let's stop, reconsider, and then go forward, not hoping for the best that the inspector will approve it, but with certainty, so we can all go forward as one council together. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and a couple of issues I think it's worth picking up on. First of all, I think we need to be clear that the air pollution, it's very clear that we're not talking about carbon and carbon dioxide emissions and climate change here. That's a very important issue that does have impacts on the forest, but this is overwhelmingly about vehicle emissions, nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, and so forth, and that's very clear in the paperwork we've got in front of us today. I was particularly disappointed earlier to hear some members threaten not to go ahead with the new Epping Leisure Centre if this amendment is lost, particularly since that's a replacement for an existing facility. It's not a wholly new development. And my concern about this amendment is essentially it says, let's carry on as we originally planned, but with an additional committee. And that doesn't really address the fundamental issues which are at stake here. The time for an advisory group, I would have thought, was between July and December last year would be when that input would be most valuable. But instead, radio silence was held, and suddenly we got the air strategy come back in December. There was an opportunity then, I think, to really talk about what the interim air pollution strategy meant, how it would be implemented, how it would work in practice. I mean, I look back at my July cabinet papers and I saw, I'd highlighted at the time the fact it was being delegated to a single member when in fact it was an issue of much wider importance, and the fact that it was, and in some sense still is, a bit of a jumble of ideas with no clear links to the development trajectory, exactly when certain measures would need to be triggered, which developments in particular affects them, and a proper programme of action. And it would then have been possible to investigate whether there was perhaps an interim strategy that would allow the release of some of these smaller scale developments, which have been talked about tonight, which are important, and the longer term strategy that would support the wider and the bigger aspirations of the local plan. And here we are trying to rush it through first in December, then in January, now in February, rather than getting on the job of trying to find an interim pollution strategy and local plan as a whole, which does deliver the needs of the area. For those reasons, I won't be supporting the amendment because it doesn't address these wider issues, and I hope that other members will feel the same way.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave Plummer.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I never know these days. Thank you. First, I'd just like to thank Councillor Jennings for his comments, which I absolutely agree with, and also Councillor Murray's earlier comments. If a group of councillors hadn't asked for this to be called in, it would have just sailed through with very, very little public awareness or discussion. I appreciate that the CAS would be up for future debate and consultation, but it's a big thing, and I think it's a good sign for our district council's democracy that this can happen, and it has happened. It's unfortunate that some people have chosen to make this political. I personally have put in a blanket apology for future district council meetings, including this one, because my mental health has been affected by them. And something that's been a massive factor in that is being labelled as the opposition. I'm not. I was elected by people in Waltham Abbey South West to represent them, regardless of my party. Once we're in the chamber, we're in the chamber. We're supposed to be working together. Secondly, reading mistruths, which gives me an opportunity to raise a couple of the points I actually want to raise. Firstly, it's been said that the Green Party supports this CAS. We don't. Our national policy is to support CASs, yes. But, we look at local issues and specific local circumstances, and we've made it very clear that Epping Forest Green Party opposes this as. So there should be an apology from the person that wrote that thing saying we support it when we don't, but I know we're not going to get one. The second thing, and this is what Stephen Neville touched on a moment ago, it's also been said that the Green Party would introduce measures quicker and faster and would cost residents more money. That is rubbish, and that takes one policy in isolation without looking at the broader picture of policies from the Green Party. We'd make public transport much better, much more affordable. We'd improve cycling infrastructure. So in the round, basically, our policies wouldn't cost people more money, and there's various other bits of wider policy. But basically, we're not doing it right. The CAS will, as has been said, directly affect lower income households more. And I can't see it. Well, I can't see how it would work. The CAS are useful and sensible in built-up urban areas and areas with decent public services, public transport rather, and other equivalents to motor vehicles. This Epping Forest is neither of those things. We're not urban, and we don't have decent public transport. We need to sort the public transport and other alternatives out first. We need the carrot, not the stick. This CAS is a stick. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have not seen any further hands, so we'll go back to the seconder, Councillor Philip.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I start my speech, can I just point out what the mover of the motion said, the mover of the amendment said, is that the paragraph should talk about the NPPF, other natural planning guidance, the 1998 local plan, and the latest iteration of the local plan. I think that final clause may have been accidentally deleted. Chairman, I've listened to many of the comments with interest tonight, and there's a number of things I need to address. I do not want to be confrontational tonight, because I would actually urge the whole council to get together and work as part of this portfolio holder group to make sure that we get to a position where we do two clear things. Firstly, we protect the forest. Secondly, we remove any need to have a clean air zone, because the mitigation measures that we've put in place mean that it's unnecessary. I need to address one or two points that were raised. If we look at the development in the district, by far and away the biggest concentration is around the Garden Town, which is over 40% of what we're looking for. There was a statement that this is only on the table because of development close to the forest. Unfortunately, that shows a misunderstanding of where we are. It's all the development throughout the district that is used to calculate the impact on the forest. It is to do with traffic journeys. It's not to do with where those houses are built. I'll point out that Natural England's moratorium on us granting planning permissions came in June 2018, before we had even hit the inspection. So it affects anywhere in the district. I've had the misfortune or fortune to be working with the local plan for most of its time. We've always had a clear direction to minimise the green belt take and focus on what we can do and not deliver any more houses than we had to. Fortunately, there are a lot of policies in the new local plan which people tend to forget, which drive down the issues. We look at the electric charging points, we look at sustainable homes, etc. A vote for the amendment is not a vote for the destruction of the forest, entirely the opposite. The forest is in a poor condition and is still in a poor condition. That's why we're looking to act now and put in place a group that can actually start to take events forward. It's perhaps unfortunate, I would agree, that we haven't had a full CAS briefing. That was scheduled for later on in this year. However, members of the council will remember that I have talked about the Natural England position and the mitigation strategy many times. Yes, it's quick, but it needs to be started now. So we need not to rush it through. We need to adopt this. We need to release those planning permissions, which are the small ones, it doesn't affect those that are allocated in the local plan. The allocated sites in the local plan still have to be addressed under the existing local plan. So it allows us to free up those ones that have been held up but are not the local plan, and it allows the inspector to look at the clean air strategy to take us forward to make sure that we have a clear process going forward. Chairman, I believe that's about my 3 minutes, so I will stop there.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to Councillor Chris Pond as the mover, and he's right to actually summarise for us. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, it's comparatively rare that an ordinary councillor makes a decision that is crucial, and that will be noted for years to come. Tonight, I believe, is such an instance. The long history of Epping Forest has half a dozen such decision points in its history. One was the decision of Thomas Willingale to break down the fences that Maitland, the lord of the manor, the developer, had erected to enter the forest and to continue lopping, as had been his right for many hundreds of years. Willingale, it should be noted, was an ordinary labouring man, an ordinary person, and nowadays no doubt he'd be on the Facebook group. But he has entered the pages of the Dictionary of National Biography on a par, in the same work as Shakespeare and Queen Victoria, on the strength that he made, that decision he made 150 years ago, not to be overridden by forces which would affect the forest badly. Dare, councillor, to be a Willingale. Cast your vote for the...
Councillor Pond?
Against the CAZ. Can you not hear me, Madam Chairman?
Just for you froze for a minute.
All right, sorry. I was saying individual councillors should, in my view, cast their vote along with the heroes of the past. People like Edward North Buxton of Buckhurst Hill, who financed the legal case. We may have some legal cases yet against the enclosures done by Maitland. Another was the decision of the Master of the Rolls, Jessel. And let it be said, Common Councilman of the City of London, John Bedford, how his statue in the view must be weeping tonight. So, councillors, please personally exercise your vote on the side of the forest. Dare to be a Buxton, dare to be a Willingale, dare to be a Jessel. Stand up for the integrity and health of the forest with your personal vote tonight. Do not give in to the forces which would impair the forest further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, members, we have debated. We now go to the vote. So I would like to make it really clear. So, Gary, if you please, repeat what we actually going to vote. For, against, or abstain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I share my screen now, hopefully you can see a Word document. And it's the amendment is what is on the right.
No, we can't see it, Gary.
We can't see it, yes.
All right, hang on.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
No.
It's behind your Zoom screen.
If you minimise your Zoom.
Minimise your Zoom, yeah, that's it.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, okay. So the original motion as proposed by Councillor Pond and seconded by Councillor Whitehouse is the left-hand page. The right-hand page is the amendment that you have just debated. And as you can see, the first part of the first paragraph is still included up to and including and the latest iteration of the new local plan. And then the bits that are in red that are struck through are to be replaced by the wording that Councillor Bedford introduced at the start, and hopefully you can read that as well. At this point in the proceedings, you are voting on the amendment only. So whether you want this amendment to form part of a new substantive motion, you are not voting sort of like in the totality. And when we vote, when Jackie calls your name, can you repeat your name, please, and then say whether you are for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can take the screen now. Okay, members, we will go to the vote. Could I ask Jackie to actually take us, please?
Councillor Avey.
Councillor Nigel Avey for the amendment.
Councillor Baldwin.
Councillor Baldwin against the amendment.
Councillor Bassett.
Councillor Bassett for the amendment.
Councillor Beales.
Councillor Amy Beales against the amendment.
Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Bedford for the amendment.
Councillor Bolton.
Councillor Bolton for the amendment.
Councillor Brady.
Councillor Brady for the amendment.
Councillor Brooks.
Councillor Brooks against the amendment.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Burrows for the amendment.
Councillor Durrell.
Councillor Dave Durrell votes for the amendment.
Councillor Hagley.
Councillor Hadley for the amendment.
Councillor Heath.
Councillor Heath against the amendment.
Councillor Heather.
Councillor Heather for the amendment.
Councillor Bob Jennings.
Councillor Bob Jennings against the amendment.
Councillor Judy Jennings. Councillor Judy Jennings.
Councillor Judy Jennings against the amendment.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones for the amendment.
Councillor Helen Kane.
Councillor Helen Kane for the amendment.
Councillor Sam Kane.
Councillor Sam Kane for the amendment.
Councillor Kaufman.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Kesker.
Councillor Kesker for the amendment.
Councillor Knight.
Councillor Yolanda Knight for the amendment.
Councillor Lee.
Councillor Jean Lee.
Councillor Leppert.
Councillor Leppert against the amendment.
Councillor Lyon.
Councillor Lyon for the amendment.
Councillor Macready.
Councillor Macready against the amendment.
Councillor McEwen. Councillor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen for the amendment.
Councillor McIver.
Councillor McIver for the amendment.
Councillor Mead.
Councillor Mead against the amendment.
Councillor Mahindra.
Evening all. Councillor Mahindra for the amendment.
Councillor Morgan.
Councillor Morgan for the amendment.
Councillor Murray.
Councillor Stephen Murray against the amendment.
Councillor Neville.
Councillor Stephen Neville against the amendment.
Councillor Owen.
Councillor Michael Owen against the amendment.
Councillor Patel.
Councillor Patel for the amendment.
Councillor Phillip.
Councillor John Philip for the amendment.
Councillor Plummer,
Councillor Dave Plummer against the amendment.
Councillor Chris Pond,
Councillor Chris Pond against the amendment.
Councillor Caroline Pond,
Caroline Pond against the amendment.
Councillor Rackham,
Councillor Rackham, and I'm for the amendment.
Councillor Roberts, Chris Roberts,
Councillor Chris Roberts against the amendment.
Councillor Deborah Roberts,
Councillor Deborah Roberts against the amendment.
Councillor Rolfe,
Councillor Rolfe for the amendment.
Councillor Sandler,
Councillor Sandler for the amendment.
Councillor Sartin,
Councillor Sartin for the amendment.
Councillor Cher Bernier,
Councillor Cher Bernier for the amendment.
Councillor Stalker,
Councillor Stalker for the amendment.
Councillor Stocker,
Councillor David Stocker for the amendment.
Councillor Sunger,
Councillor Sunger for the amendment.
Councillor Vaz,
Councillor Basil Vaz for the amendment.
Councillor Chris Whitbread,
Councillor Chris Whitbread for the amendment.
Councillor Holly Whitbread,
Councillor Holly Whitbread for the amendment.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse,
Councillor Janet Whitehouse against the amendment.
Councillor John Whitehouse,
Councillor John Whitehouse against.
Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, Councillor Wixley against the amendment.
Okay, if you just give me a couple of minutes to correctly count up.
Members, I don't know if you would like to take a comfort break for 5 minutes or not. No, we will
No.
wait. Yes.
I have for the amendment 33 and against the amendment 21.
So the amendment is actually carried.
Carried.
Right. So could I ask Gary to tell us exactly how the motion is actually at the moment?
Would you like me to read it out to you, Chairman?
Please.
Okay, so the substantive motion is now: the Council hereby declares that 1. It will determine planning applications only on the basis of the law, including the National Planning Policy Framework and other national planning guidance, the 1998 Local Plan and the latest iteration of the new Local Plan. 2. That the Cabinet Member for Planning and Sustainability will form a cross-party portfolio holder advisory group in no more than 1 month from the date of this resolution. And the third paragraph: the group is formed to support the portfolio holder in the delivery of the interim air pollution mitigation strategy and provide oversight of the work of the technical stakeholder group. This could include working with officers to identify where further initiatives not identified in the air pollution mitigation strategy could be brought forward to advance air quality improvements with the objective of removing the need to introduce a clean air zone, alongside the acceleration and enhancement of mitigation measures. The portfolio holder advisory group will provide democratic oversight of the development of any clean air zone scheme prior to its consideration through the Council's formal decision-making processes and public consultation on it in the event that future air quality monitoring and modelling continues to demonstrate that, even after the acceleration and enhancement mitigation measures, a clean air zone is required.
Thank you, Gary. Can you tell us now the procedure to continue?
Well, you've agreed the amendment. The amendment has been carried, and that is now the substantive motion. So the debate continues now on the new substantive motion, and members can either have a debate and a vote on the motion as it currently stands, or someone is free to propose another amendment if it is seconded.
Thank you very much. We have one hand at the moment, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to exercise my right to speak against the substantive motion. I'm obviously aware of the last vote, so I'm probably wasting my breath, but I do think that it's important that points are clearly made. I believe that if members support this substantive motion, what you are in effect doing is opening the door to large-scale development within the very close environment of our forest, which the mitigation strategy without a clean air zone will not deal with. So that's in effect what you're voting for if you support this substantive motion. Massive, large-scale development within the very close environments of our forest and the clean air zone on the designated routes that have already been labelled. The second point I want to make is I'm very disappointed by the tone that some members of the majority group chose to adopt tonight. Extremely partisan and extremely personal. I don't see myself as an opposition. If you mean by that I'm not a paid up member of the majority group, that's obvious. But I don't see myself as an opposition councillor. I see my job as making EFDC work and to scrutinise majority group decisions, because in any location, in any council, majority groups can become complacent and they can become arrogant. And I think that that's what we've witnessed over a number of issues as regards EFDC. But I do resent very strongly being a labelled opposition. That's not my role. My role, and other members can speak for themselves, is to just scrutinise carefully and take considered action when it's necessary. My final remarks, I'm still very unhappy about how the council got into this position. I've been a member of this district council for nearly 40 years, Madam Chairman. And this is one of the worst scenarios that I have seen in that time. We still haven't had an explanation, and I make these points very politely, Chairman, in a very low-key manner, but that doesn't mean I'm still not angry about them. We haven't had any explanation why it was deemed reasonable that this mitigation strategy should be made by a single member of the Cabinet. No attempt to answer that. We've had no attempt to answer why councillors that used a constitutional right for a call-in mechanism, and that is a proper constitutional right in an overview cabinet scenario. And not only were they criticised, but they were very personally criticised. Words such as disgraceful, the person who stole Christmas, very personal criticisms were made of members that chose to use the call-in mechanism. We've had no explanation of how ONS was effectively neutered. I'm not saying that the ONS meeting wasn't run properly. I actually put on record how well I thought the chairman ran that meeting. But we've had no explanation of how it can be deemed acceptable that 7 out of 17 members can endorse a single portfolio holder decision. And my main concern, and we've had no reasonable explanation.
3 minutes, Chairman.
Why did we receive this motion and now before the meeting? When now I've listened to the debate, it was quite clear that the majority group had had this motion long before, because they were speaking mainly prepared speeches, which is fine.
Councillor Murray, I'm so sorry.
Finish. They knew what the amendment was. Why wasn't that shared with all of us much earlier? certainly by the Friday before the meeting. We've had no explanation of that, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Heap.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this doesn't actually alter much. I mean, we still are in a position where giving permissions might be legally dubious because Natural England can't agree this until there's a proper timeline in place. Councillor Murray has raised some very, very interesting points about a lack of democratic control at the heart of this whole business. And it is very badly thought through, particularly the air mitigation quality strategy. And it is just tacked on to the end of a local plan that was passed in 2017. We're still not anywhere near getting it delivered. I suppose somebody will claim that it will be nearly delivered, but it's had 60 major modifications. So we have wasted a lot of money on some very expensive consultants, and that's something that does need to be addressed. But as to this motion now, it doesn't really affect much at all. It's still going to be an imposition of things that are badly thought through onto the SAC. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we've had some interesting points raised there in those last two speeches. Councillor Murray and Councillor Heap mentioned the local plan, which is now with the inspector. It's not our local plan, it's a plan that's with the inspector. And it actually gives us controlled development, not over-development. So that's really important to understand. The applications that have been freed up tonight are smaller developments, and we heard a good percentage of those are actually not near the forest. They're in other parts of the district. What we'd have had tonight if the opposition had had their way, and I will use the word opposition because Councillor Murray uses that on a regular basis when he's describing the take-up of chairs at scrutiny. If the opposition had had its way tonight, we'd have had more dither and delay, and we would have had a local plan that was failing. And Councillor Heap, that would have meant even more expensive consultants costing the residents of Epping Forest even more money. And it would have, Councillor Whitehouse, put things like Epping Sports Centre in jeopardy. In jeopardy. I don't use that word weakly. And members, I think we need to be aware you've made the right decision this evening, because now we can have a measured debate about how we try and work to avoid a CAS. Whereas if the opposition had had his way, despite trying to mislead residents that they were the no to CAS group, they would have led us into a CAS by the nose. So members, we've made a good decision tonight, the right decision for this council to move forward, and I would move to vote this evening, if I have a seconder.
Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second Councillor Sam Cane.
Okay. Gary, can we ask you now?
Yep.
Do we go to the vote immediately or to actually continue the debate? I have a couple of hands.
Well, effectively what has happened is Councillor Whitbread, seconded by Councillor Cane, has moved a procedural vote that the question be now put. So if the council is in agreement, the vote can now be put.
Right. So will we go to the vote?
On the motion that the question be now put.
Yes, we have to go to the vote.
Couldn't we agree that by acclamation, Chairman? I don't think any of us want to prolong the debate, do we? The main issues have been addressed.
Agreed.
Yes.
Well, Chairman, in that case, if there's anybody who's against, perhaps they can speak up.
But yes, Chairman, I'm only against if there are still people who wish to speak to the substantive motion. I'm not being difficult, but I believe it's such an important issue that if there are still members who wish to speak to the substantive motion, we should hear them. I don't know whether there is. I can see a couple of hands up, so I would be against the procedural motion of moving to a vote, because we've got a couple of members who still want to speak in the substantive motion, and I think that's the correct thing to do.
Hear them out and move to the vote.
Right. Gary, I need your expertise, please.
Well, if members are in agreement, we have two hands up at the moment, or three hands up, sorry. Councillor Phillip, Councillor Plummer, and I'm presuming that is Councillor Chris Pond, but it could be Councillor Caroline Pond. It is Councillor Chris Pond, he's just put his hand up. So if the council are happy, we listen to those three and then we put the current substantive motion as amended to the vote.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Okay. We start with Councillor Chris Pond, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to say a couple of sentences, which are the will of the council has obviously been exercised, and I think wrongly, but there we are. I am willing to go along with the motion as amended, but of course that simply transfers the fight against excessive development near the forest to the major matters, consultation and examination in front of the inspector. And although I take no part in it, no doubt to the realms of Facebook and Twitter as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dave Plummer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll go along with the motion as amended. I'd rather the amendment wasn't there, but it is there. And as others have said, it doesn't really change that much. One thing I would be interested in is several councillors tonight have said if we don't do this, we'll have stuff imposed on us. It's something that probably can't be answered now, but I'd be interested to know what representation the district council or those individual councillors have made to the government regarding that policy, because clearly it's something that councillors don't agree with. Just wondering what representations have been made to try and change it. Because I personally think that we should be able to have exceptions. Local builders who are building an extension or building one house that's not close to the forest, we should be able to have exceptions for those. We don't currently. What have we done to try and put those representations to the government to call for that sort of thing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor John Phillip, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will try and be brief. There's a couple of things I do feel I need to say. I actually was agreeing with some of the things that Councillor Murray was saying, but unfortunately he blotted his copybook towards the end when he started saying that people were calling people things that they shouldn't have done, and then he promptly proceeded to call me arrogant. I really do object to that. We've clashed before on that. That is not the case. Doesn't mean that I also always agree with them, but disagreeing with Councillor Murray is not necessarily being arrogant if you thought about it. I know, because I was the seconder of the amendment, I only finished working on it about 5 o'clock this evening. So perhaps the reason that the Conservatives are more familiar with this matter is they've listened more carefully to the briefings. It's very important to note this is not simply due to the local plan. This was in place before the local plan examination. What we need to do is make sure that as far as possible, we can, as a whole council, get together and make the improvements we need to the forest, which is what we all want to do. We've already reduced the number of dwellings in the local plan around Epping and around Chigwell and around Loughton. So there's numbers coming down significantly there. What we need to do is make sure that as far as possible, we protect the forest from the dangers of the traffic through the forest and from the visitor pressure. We have that with the visitor strategy. The interim strategy will help us to do that. And if we work together as a united council, I see no reason why we cannot make significant changes to make things better for our residents and for the forest and avoid the things that we don't want. I'm glad to hear a number of the other members of council saying they will go with this amended motion. I welcome that and look forward to working with them to make sure that we make a success of this.
Thank you very much. Members, we're going to vote for, against, or abstain on this new substantive motion. I'm so sorry. Jackie.
Right. Councillor Avey.
Councillor Nigel Avey for the amended motion.
Councillor Baldwin.
Councillor Roger Baldwin against the amended motion.
Councillor Bassett.
Councillor Bassett for the amended motion.
Councillor Beales.
Councillor Amy Beales abstain.
Councillor Bedford.
Councillor Bedford for the amended motion.
Councillor Bolton.
For the amended motion.
Councillor Brady.
For the amended motion, Councillor Brady.
Councillor Brooks.
Councillor Brooks abstains on the motion.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Burrows for the amended motion.
Councillor Durrell.
Councillor Dave Durrell votes for the amended motion.
Councillor Hadley.
Councillor Hadley for the amended motion.
Councillor Heap.
Councillor Heap against the amended motion.
Councillor Heather.
Councillor Heather for the amended motion.
Councillor Bob Jennings.
Councillor Bob Jennings abstain.
Councillor Judy Jennings.
Councillor Judy Jennings against.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones for the amended motion.
Councillor Helen Kane.
Councillor Helen Kane for the amended motion.
Councillor Sam Kane.
Councillor Sam Kane for.
Councillor Kaufman.
Councillor Kaufman is against.
Councillor Kesker. Councillor Kesker.
Councillor Kesker for the amended motion.
Councillor Knight.
Councillor Knight for the amended motion.
Councillor Lee.
Councillor Lee for the amended motion.
Councillor Leppert.
Councillor Leppert against the amended motion.
Councillor Lyon.
Councillor Lyon for the amended motion.
Councillor Macready.
Councillor Macready against the amended motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen for.
Councillor McIver.
Councillor McIver for the amended motion.
Councillor Mead.
Councillor Mead against the amended motion.
Councillor Mahindra.
Councillor Mahindra for the motion.
Councillor Morgan.
Councillor Morgan for the motion.
Councillor Murray.
Councillor Stephen Murray against the motion.
Councillor Neville.
Councillor Stephen Neville against the amended motion.
Councillor Owen.
Councillor Owen against.
Councillor Patel.
Councillor Patel for the amended motion.
Councillor Phillip.
Councillor Phillip for the amended motion.
Councillor Plummer.
Councillor Plummer against.
Councillor Chris Pond.
Chris Pond against.
Councillor Caroline Pond.
Caroline Pond against.
Councillor Rackham.
For the amended motion, please.
Councillor Chris Roberts.
Against the motion.
Councillor Deborah Roberts.
Councillor Deborah Roberts against the amended motion.
Councillor Rolfe.
Councillor Rolfe for the motion.
Councillor Sandler.
Councillor Sandler for the amended motion.
Councillor Sartin.
Councillor Sartin for the amended motion.
Councillor Sher-Bernier.
Councillor Sher-Bernier for the amended motion.
Councillor Stalker.
Councillor Stalker for the amended motion.
Councillor Stocker.
Councillor David Stocker for the amended motion.
Councillor Sunger. Councillor Sunger.
Councillor Sunger for the amended motion, sorry.
Councillor Vaz.
Councillor Basil Vaz for the amended motion.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
So Chris Whitbread for the amended motion.
Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Councillor Holly Whitbread for the amended motion.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse against the amended motion.
Councillor John Whitehouse.
Councillor John Whitehouse against.
Councillor David Wixley. Councillor Wixley.
Sorry, against.
Right, I won't keep you one moment and I'll just tot up. Right, that's 33 for, 18 against and 3 abstentions.
The motion is carried, Chairman.
Yes, the substantive motion, I managed to say it properly, I think, is carried. Thank you, members. Right. Item 4, exclusion of public and press. So therefore, I bring this meeting to a close at just 1 minute past 9. Thank you, members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Chairman.
Aye.
Good night, all.
Good night.